The top 50 solo board games of all time 2024 edition. Hey, it's Jared from Specifically Solo. I've ranked them 50 to 1, and we're going to count them down over a series of videos. Should be a lot of fun to go through this list and share with you my 50 favorite solo board games. Hopefully, you have some favorites possibly on the list, or maybe you find some new favorites that you want to check out as well. So first, I'm going to tell you how I made the list, and then we'll jump into the rankings. So I used PubMeeple to make this list, sort of, which is a ranking website that connects directly with BGG. Board games is just one of the things that you can rank on there. And I went through and I did all my comparisons, and you can rank your entire collection if you want. And then it spits you out a list of what it thinks are your number 1 to your number 50 or however many games that you rank. But where I found the problem with this was that sometimes it would compare games against one another, and it would compete against games like, it would put ISS Vanguard maybe against cartographers. Well, those are two different very types of games in my opinion. ISS Vanguard is a very big, fun campaign game, takes multiple hours, takes a ton of table space. It's a whole day kind of gaming, whereas cartographers is a game that you can play in like 20 to 30 minutes and is a little roll and write. And I didn't think it was fair to say that, just because it's bigger, ISS Vanguard is better maybe than cartographers or vice versa. So I used it for the most part, but then I rearranged the list a little bit on my own as well. But it is a good site if you want to go through your whole collection and just rank your games. Again, it pits each game up against each other, and then you just select which one you like more. You do that multiple times, and then it will give you your list of your top games. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into this list. So number 50 on this list, kicking things off, is Dice Hospital. This is a worker placement game where your workers are dice, and the theme of this one is a hospital, and your dice are your patients. You're trying to cure them and get them out of the hospital. The higher the number they have, the better they are off, and once they get to 6 or above, they get to leave the hospital, and you get points for them at the end of the game. Conversely, if they drop down to a 0, well, that is not a good thing either. So in this game, you are putting your dice out on various spots on the board. You are using your hospital staff, which are these little hexagonal pieces that you have set up to basically put your dice on those spots and try to heal or cure as many dice as possible. And you're trying to just get the most points possible to win. There's a few reasons that I really like this solo. One is it is a very fun game to just, if you want to roll a bunch of dice, it's great for that. I really like the theme of it too. I think it's kind of unique in terms of being in that hospital setting. I think that's fun, trying to play the role of a doctor, curing all of these patients. And it doesn't take up a lot of table space. It's not a very long game either. So those are all things that I like about it. So it's just a fun one to break out from time to time. And when you want to roll a bunch of dice and, act like you're working in a hospital, then this is the one for you. Dice Hospital in at number 50. Number 49 is a Lord of the Rings game, but probably not the Lord of the Rings game that you are thinking of, and that is Lord of the Rings, The Adventure Book. So there's a few of these adventure book games that have come out at this point, Lord of the Rings being my favorite, I think, just because I love that theme so much. And what I really like about this game is that it is sort of a campaign game and is split up into 8 chapters, but all of those chapters are very short. It's also just a hand management game, so you're going to have these cards that you are using to try and get these various miniatures to certain places on the board. And every chapter is a little bit different. It's an adventure book because it does have like a hardback book that comes with the game that you just flip open and you play on that map, if you will, and then you move to the next one. So I like that it's a short kind of campaign game. There's a lot of campaign games out there that are very long and sprawling and epic, and this gives you a really nice feel and not a lot of playtime. It's also very easy to knock out 3 or 4 play sessions in a row, and I feel like it works well solo because it's not a lot of upkeep, and also you can just decide in your head where you're going to put all of the characters. If you're playing with multiple people, you have more cards that you can use, but you're also trying to make decisions because it's a cooperative game of where you want certain characters to go, and sometimes that can be difficult. So sometimes it's just easy to play it solo and come up with all those decisions in your head. So this is the 3rd entry in this adventure book line. And then there's, each chapter has new puzzles and new things that you're trying to achieve to get through that chapter. And none of them are insanely hard, but they do provide a nice challenge. Honestly, a little more challenge than I thought it was going to be when I went into the game. So for those reasons, Lord of the Rings, The Adventure Book is in at number 49. Number 48 on the list is a big worker placement game, and that is Carnegie. So in this game, you are kind of taking on the role of Andrew Carnegie, who was a very successful businessman. And in this particular game, you're going to recruit and manage your employees. You're going to expand your business. You're going to invest in real estate. You're going to produce goods. You're creating transport chains. You're doing all kinds of different things throughout the course of this game. And there's 20 rounds, and then you have different action that you will take in each round, basically whatever you choose. And how it works in the solo mode is you choose, and then obviously the solo mode chooses like the next time that it's time to pick an action. There's a few reasons that I enjoy this. One is that the solo mode is very easy to operate for how big of a game this is. I also think it's a very good worker placement game. Some of the reasons that it's a little bit lower on this list is it just does take up a lot of space. It does take a while to play as well. It's kind of a lot to wrap your head around the first time that you play it, but once you understand it and once you have that rule set down, it really provides a nice experience that you can come back to over and over again. And every game is different, and it's always a nice challenge trying to figure out exactly where you're going to put your workers out to maximize the amount of things that you can do. This one is also on Board Game Arena. It just got recently added there, so if you want to play it in a browser and not set everything up on a table, you have that option as well. But really fantastic worker placement game, probably one of the best. It just doesn't hit my table as much as it should because, again, it's sprawling size and also it does take a while to play. But every time I do get it out, it is a lot of fun, and that is Carnegie. 47 is a game that came out this year, and I have a review on this game, and this is Let's Go to Japan from AEG. One thing that I really enjoy about this game is the theme of the game. So you are planning a trip through Japan. You are alternating between two different cities, Tokyo and Kyoto, and you're going to have these cards that you're going to place out, which are your activities that you're doing each day. And you're trying to match up certain icons so that will score you the most points for that particular day. Also, you want to try to, stay in Tokyo all of one day and Kyoto the next day. If you keep bouncing back and forth, that's going to be negative points for you at the end of the game because you're going to have to constantly keep taking trains to go back and forth. Also, sometimes you want certain activities on certain days. Like one day you might really want to have a big dining day. Another day might be a big shopping day. And another day might be checking out the monuments or the historical sites of the city. So there's a ton of cards in this game, and it's really fun to kind of build your plan and build your week out in terms of what activities you are going to do. If you're somebody that likes planning trips, if you're the person in your group that when you go on a vacation, you kind of create the itinerary, I think you will really enjoy this game of Let's Go to Japan. So then the game ends with the final round in which you go on your trip and you activate your cards. The other thing that's unique about that is that you can only activate cards that you've gotten up to at that point in your trip. So you may have something later in the trip, like say you have another restaurant or whatever on Friday, but it can't count for your day on Tuesday because you haven't gotten to that point of your trip yet. So there's some strategy there in terms of which cards you place on which day, which activities you are placing in which slots. The solo mode is pretty easy to run as well. The only slight negative I have about this game is that the scoring does take a while when you are doing your trip at the end of the game. It takes a while to kind of tally all of that stuff up and tally the points up for the solo mode, but it's still a lot of fun, and there's not a lot of games out there with this theme of planning a trip, and I am the one that loves planning trips for my family, and so this just really gets me in that zone of trying to come up with the best way to do these activities in the best order, and that's something that I really enjoy. So Let's Go to Japan is number 47. Number 46 is a smaller box game of a very popular, larger solo game, and that is Horizons of Spirit Island. So Spirit Island is one of the most popular solo games out there. Horizons of Spirit Island is in a smaller box, and also the spirits in this game are a little bit easier to start with. So it's got a little bit smaller game board. It's got 5 spirits in it that are ideal if you're playing Spirit Island for the first time, but you can also use all those spirits with the existing game as well. So this was a Target exclusive for a while, but now you can kind of find it anywhere. It's also pretty cheap as well, and it's an excellent game where you are trying to figure out the best way to kind of survive on this island. And so you are these spirits and you are trying to play your cards in the best way possible because you're not happy about these invaders that have come onto your island and are invading your space. And then sometimes those invaders are going to form towns and they're going to form cities and they're going to bring blight into the land as well. And so you as a spirit are constantly trying to avoid that and try to figure out the best way to manage that. So it is a very stressful game. It's not like a calm, cozy game by any means, but it is a lot of fun to try and go through that challenge of what is the best way that I can manage to play these cards to get these invaders to leave so that I can claim back my island. And of course, the original Spirit Island is, again, one of the most popular solo games out there. It's a very big game. It's a very heavy game as well. The reason I like Horizons of Spirit Island is I feel like it's a good starting point. It's where I started when I was interested in getting into this game, and it's just a little bit easier to operate and a little bit easier to manage. The playtime is still there. It does still take a while to play. It's still going to give you nice, really crunchy, thinky decisions that you're going to be working at throughout the course of the game, but I just like that it's in a little bit of a smaller package that is also a little bit easier to understand for your first time through of playing Spirit Island. So Horizons of Spirit Island. 45 on the list is another worker placement game, and this one does have a really cozy theme, and that is Flamecraft. So in Flamecraft, you are visiting these different shops that are set out on the board. Those change every single game in terms of where they're going to be at. The board also is a big rolling mat that you roll out on your table. And then you are taking your little worker, your dragon, and visiting these various shops, and you're collecting these specific goods to try and complete contracts. The things I like about Flamecraft are the artwork is just stunning. It really just pops when you set everything up on the table. It just looks really good, and it's really cozy and comforting and gives you a really fun experience to play. Also, the solo mode is very easy to operate. It's pretty much a beat your own score, but there are challenges in the rulebook, and you can kind of do this little mini campaign where if you score over a certain number of points, you get to add things for setup of the next game. So I like that they did a little bit more with the solo mode than just the typical beat your own score. It gives you some incentives to work towards while you are playing the game. It's also a very easy game to understand. There's really only two things that you can do on your turn. You can go to a spot, then you can do one of two things, basically collect resources there or complete a contract there and then fire up the dragons that are on that spot. All of the dragons have different little abilities depending on what category they are in, and it's just really fun to play. And it's a game that I come back to a lot. Again, if you're somebody that likes completing contracts, if you're a fan of hand management, set collection, worker placement, all of those things are kind of going on in this game. And I feel like it comes in a really nice package. The only slight negative I would have is that it does take up a lot of table space, more than you would expect for a game of this type. So just be aware of that going in. But overall, a really enjoyable solo experience, and also one that if you are going to play it with a bigger group, groups that I've played this with have had lots of fun with it. It's pretty easy to teach and for everybody to understand. So Flamecraft, number 45 on the list. Number 44 is a deduction game, and that is Turing Machine. So in Turing Machine, you are trying to figure out these secret codes. And the reason that this works great solo is that it is so quick to kind of set up, and you just are playing these cards, these really cool interlaced cards, trying to figure out what the particular code is. It's a very fast game. You can play it in 15 to 20 minutes, and there's so many different combinations that you're trying to solve in the box. I know they've added even more that you can look up online in terms of how to organize the cards so you can have even more solutions that you can play. But you're just trying to figure out this secret code with these perforated cards, and there's lots of different combinations, and you might play a number and say, okay, this card is going to tell me if this number is higher than 3 or lower than 3, or this card is going to tell me how many, even numbers are possibly in this code. And so things like that. And so throughout the course of trying to figure out the code, you're using logic, you're using deduction. It's a really fun deduction game, and I feel like every collection should have one of those. And sometimes those are hard solo to really do well, because sometimes you need other players, or you're depending on what other players are doing at the table to deduce what they're doing. But in Turing Machine, it says, hey, everything's here in the middle of the table. Everybody work on their own. I mean, when you play this with multiple people, it's basically multiplayer solitaire anyway. So a really fun logic and deduction game, Turing Machine at number 44. 43 is a tile laying game that came out last year in a very small box, and that is Beacon Patrol. And in Beacon Patrol, you are a captain of the Coast Guard, and you're trying to check these buoys and these lighthouses to ensure the safety of the coast. And so you're placing your tiles next to tiles that are already placed. You have your little ship, you're exploring the sea, you're trying to connect as many tiles together as possible, and you're trying to connect those based on the icons that are on the tile, and also get all four sides of the tile connected as well, because it's going to score you points at the end of the game. Now, when you play this multiplayer, this is a co-op game, but it works really well solo, again, because you just set it up on a table, and then you can just kind of make all of the decisions yourself. It's a very quick game. Rule set is very light for this one. I really love the artwork in Beacon Patrol. I feel like it just gives off that coastal nautical vibe very well. And I also have said before on this channel that I really like games where you start with kind of nothing, and then at the end of the game, you've built up to something really big. And that happens a lot in abstract games and also tile laying games. And that's the same thing that happens here in Beacon Patrol. You start out, your map is very small, and then you'll kind of just see where it takes you throughout the course of the game. So it's a great little tile laying game, and it's a number 43 on the list. Beacon Patrol, that one is from Pandasaurus. 42 is a game that I just did a review on a couple of weeks ago, a game that came out this year, and that is Forges of Ravenshire. So in Forges of Ravenshire, this is a worker placement game once again, where your workers are dice, and you are placing them out on the central board. You're going to place one die, and then you're going to pick up one die as well, and place it on your personal board. When you place it on your personal board, you're able to run certain guilds that you have set up, which you can get upgrades for throughout the course of the game. And then you move on to the production phase. And in the production phase, you're trying to complete these contracts and basically forge various pieces of armor that will score you points throughout the course of the game. The really interesting thing about Forges of Ravenshire is the game is based on how much money you have at the end of the game, not particularly how many contracts you get done. So it's a constant battle in terms of spending your money to get upgrades and to get other things that will help you out throughout the game, and also keeping that money so you have a high enough score at the end of the game. The solo mode is really easy to operate. It's a deck of cards. You flip the card over, and then it takes an action. There's a few things in the solo mode that will change the setup every single time. So sometimes it will be really focusing on one particular area of production. Sometimes it will really want to focus on swords or maybe pieces of body armor or things like that. So that's going to change every single game. So a lot of variety there, high quality components. It's a really easy game to understand and doesn't take up a lot of space either. But I really like it as a worker placement game. I love that aspect of, placing the die and taking the die. And the solo mode is doing the same thing in this game as well. So, when it's placing die and taking die, you have to be aware of that, because you can kind of try to figure out what it might take on its next turn and plan against that. So lots of planning in this game, but a very fun worker placement game. Again, one that came out this year, Forges of Ravenshire at number 42. And number 41, the last one for this particular video, is an Uwe Rosenberg game. That is Jord. So Jord is a fishing game, and this is another worker placement game. You can kind of see that I really enjoy worker placement games. So you start with 3 workers, and then you can decide what you want to do with those workers. You're trying to basically get as many fish as possible, because fish are going to score you points. And money is very tight in this game as well. You're also buying these shares throughout the course of the game, which will help you score points at the end of the game. And you have these village elders as well, which are going to give you special abilities. The way the solo mode works is you basically just block yourself in this game. So one turn you play as like blue tokens, and then the next round you play as red tokens, and you can't go to the same spots that you put your blue tokens in. So you're just kind of working against yourself, which is a really clever way to do a solo mode, and a very easy one to operate. It has very minimal upkeep as well. You can even make the solo mode more difficult and add another color in there so that you're working against 2 other colors throughout the course of the game. So it's a lot of fun. The artwork is very good. I know they just came out with a big box for this. I think they're getting ready to do a reprint of this. This is a little difficult to find right now, but a very fun worker placement solo game about the theme of fishing. So if you're into that, I would definitely check this one out, and it's a lot of fun. It's a Rosenberg classic and works really great for solo, and that is News for Jord in at number 41 on the list. So just to recap this list of the top 50 solo board games from 50 to 41, we had Dice Hospital, The Lord of the Rings Adventure Book, Carnegie, Let's Go to Japan. Also on this list, Horizons of Spirit Island, Flamecraft, Turing Machine, Beacon Patrol, Forges of Ravenshire, and News for Jord. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. I'm going to obviously be doing the rest of this list as well and counting all the way down or up to number 1, the my favorite solo game that has ever come out. So thank you so much. Until next time, I'm Jared. You've been checking out Specifically Solo.